welcome to an oral history project. Myself is Georgio Galaris.
And I am Prerit Seth.
And we are interviewing today a World War II veteran, Mr. Garabedian, here today.
My name is Charlie Garabedian, and I'm 92 years old. I've been a resident of Rutherford since 1948, 67 years. However, I grew up in East Rutherford and graduated from East Rutherford High School in 1942. I enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps December 15, 1942, and got discharged November 15, 1945, when World War II ended. I took boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina. After graduating from there, we moved on to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I joined K Company, 3rd Battalion, 23rd Marine Regiment of the 4th Marine Division, which was being newly formed as a machine gunner. In July 1943, we moved to Camp Pendleton, California. We left for overseas around Christmas 1943, and in a period of 12 and a half months, we participated in 4 major battles. It's never been done in U.S. history before or since, and all amphibious assaults, which are the worst kind. The Pacific War had 20 Army divisions and 6 Marine divisions. The 4th Marine Division had the most casualties in the Pacific War. We had 3,300 killed in action and a total of 17,722 casualties. My K Company had 90 killed in action and 98 and 99% casualties. We were awarded 2 Presidential Unit Citations, which are the highest unit citation the United States gives out. We were awarded one for Saipan and Tinian combined, and a second one for Iwo Jima. I was awarded the Bronze Star for Valor for saving a fellow Marine. In fact, I was involved in 5 life-saving situations on Iwo Jima. I'm proud of that. The killing part I'm not proud of, but we had to do it. The morale in our outfit was tremendous. The flag raising on Iwo Jima was done by the 5th Marine Division because it was in their zone of action. However, the worst part of Iwo Jima was taken by my outfit, the 4th Marine Division, was Radar Hill, the amphitheater, and the meat grinder. After World War II ended, I came home and went back to my old job at Becton Dickinson. I joined the Rutherford Police Department on July 21st, 1952, and retired on October 1st, 1987, 35 years, 2 months, and 9 days. I was promoted to sergeant, lieutenant, and then captain in 1973. I also graduated from the National FBI Academy at Quantico. I have one son, Peter. He's married to Joanne for 39 years. And she and Peter are graduates of Rutherford High School. Joanne teaches at Pierpont School for about 30 years. I have 2 grandchildren, Matthew Garabedian, and a sister whose name now is Jennifer Reardon. They also both graduated from Rutherford High School. I also have 4 great-granddaughters and another one on the way in April. It's also a girl. Jennifer is in the Rutherford High School Hall of Fame. She played 3 sports. Now, one regret I have, I wish I had gone to college. I could have gone athletically, academically, or through the GI Bill, and I didn't take advantage of any of that. Everyone should go to college. Now, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. That was very interesting.
You'll have to talk a little louder, you know.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Starting off, what are your emotions going into these battles? With your
What was it?
What are your emotions going into battle? Your starting emotions.
What was the worst battle? No, I can't hear you.
When you started to go into a battle, imagine
Yeah.
yourself, right? You're back in the day. You're going into battle. What was the first feeling? What was the first sort of type of emotion that you had immediately?
Yeah, well, you really don't know what combat's like. And fortunately, or unfortunately, whatever, our first battle my outfit didn't get hit that hard.
Right.
And then, of course, we hit Saipan, which at that point became the worst battle of the war until later on when we hit Iwo Jima.
Yes.
But when we hit Saipan, within an hour, I think if any of us could have gone home, we would all went home because it was so brutal.
It was tough.
And then Tinian was pretty bad, but not as bad as Saipan. But of course, we kept saying to one another, well, we'll never hit nothing like Saipan again. Then we hit the worst one of them all, Iwo Jima. And anything else?
When you were talking about the raising of the flag,
Yeah.
what's going through your mind at that moment as you see the flag
Well,
rise?
when they raised the flag, there was, I don't know how many ships out at sea. They all fired like crazy. Even they were, they use it for supporting fire, but some of them wasn't even firing at any targets. They were just firing. It was like 1,000 4th of Julys. The noise was unbelievable. But of course, actually the war was just really starting. That was the 4th day. But it charged you up a little bit. In other words,
You get excited.
you felt better.
Yeah.
Of course, what was in store for us yet, we didn't realize,
Right.
Anything else?
Now, can you tell us, what made you pursue
The what?
What made you pursue the forces into
The
combat?
police department?
No, not the police department, into
Oh,
the
being
World
a
War.
Marine?
Being a Marine, yeah.
Well, I always wanted to be a Marine since I was a kid, I guess. Well, I always heard that it was the toughest outfit, and it is.
It is.
And I wanted to be in the toughest outfit. I was a tough son of a gun. I show you articles. they wrote
You
about
are,
me.
yeah.
But I wasn't the biggest, but nobody messed with me. Anyway,
Nobody messed with
whatever.
you. Right.
Now I'm an old man. What else here?
You talked about this briefly, and it caught my curiosity. Why didn't you go to college after military service?
Well, because I was stupid, that's why. I played high school football and other sports, baseball and all that. But when I come back, we started a semi-pro football team over in East Rutherford.
Right.
And most of us were East Rutherford alumni. I was the oldest on the team. I think I was around 26, 28, something like that. And then, of course, I met my wife, but I can't blame that on her because she would have backed me in anything I wanted, anything. She was the best human being I ever met. And she's dead at 36 and a half years. She was gorgeous. She was from the Bronx. She was, I don't know if Jim remembers her. But anyway, I always wanted to be a Marine. I don't know. And I went, by the way, I went with two other fellows, two classmates of mine. We started in July of 42, and they kept failing. One's eyes weren't good enough, and the other one was colorblind. At that time, they wouldn't take you when you were colorblind. And we went again in September. I got put off getting sworn in because I figured my buddies will pass. Like you think you're going to go together, you don't wind up together anyway. But anyway, they failed again. Then there was an article in the paper saying that they were going to stop all enlistments in the Marine Corps. So I said to them, listen, I'm going over again and I'm going to get sworn in today. You guys coming? They came again. I even memorized the colorblind chart and they changed it all. So they failed again, both of them.
God.
And I got sworn in. That's why I went in December 15th of 42. And Jimmy Corson, the one his eyes weren't good, he got killed and I was still in the States. He wound up getting drafted into the Army, went in after me, and yet he was dead before we left the States. Well, that's one of the things why I really believe, and I seen that one night on TV. I wish I had been able to write it down or whatever. They rate my outfit, the 4th Marine Division, the greatest fighting unit of all time, going back to the Roman days, I guess. So anyway, Jimmy Corson got killed early, and Frankie Robinson wound up in the Army, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he got shot through the knee. He's dead about 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So both of them got killed, and I saw way more action than both of them. That's the way war war becomes.
You never know how it's going to go.
You can't predict. That's another thing. You cannot predict how a man is going to be and react in combat.
Yeah.
You'll see a big, powerful man. You think he's going to be great in combat.
You just never
He's
know.
nothing.
Because
then
it's
you see a little
reactive.
guy that you think how the heck did he even get in the Marines? And he becomes a hero.
Yeah.
I was lucky, not bragging. I was always near the top.
Right.
Near the top. I mean, I had 5 life-saving situations. That was the thing I'm so proud of.
Can you
I saved
describe
a
some
lot
of
of
these?
men. Huh?
Can you describe some of these situations?
Yeah. Do you have
I
like?
can't hear you.
Did you have like a personal? Can you describe one of the personal times you saved somebody? Like, do you recall any memory of that, of personally
I
saving?
remember every
Please-
bit of it.
please
In
go
fact, there's 5 life-saving situations, 4 of them that are documented. One that I got the Bronze Star for Valor,
Wow.
but I was in way more brutal places than that, and saving other people. And what happened is after we come back from Iwo Jima, we got back to Maui. Maui was our advanced base, by the way. Every time we went into battle, we come all the way back to Maui. Of course, in the end, when the war ended, we were the closest division to the States, so we got discharged first,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like that. Anything else?
When you're saving someone, like, can you describe a situation where you were saving someone out of one of the 5, if you don't mind?
Do I have recollection?
Yes.
Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Can you share it with us?
There was one situation, I don't know if I'm going too far. There was one situation that I cannot document. I wish I could. What happened, we had well, I won't say it because that would be like last time. Anyway, we got a second platoon got trapped and ambushed.
Mm-hmm.
And myself and 2 other Marines went out to save these fellows. The one fellow, he disappeared. I don't know whether he got killed, wounded, or decided not to follow through. Now, the 2 of us, you can't believe this, but what they actually did is run a tank over him and a tank over me. Ran the tank over us.
Oh my God.
And we saved that whole platoon. There was like 22, 25 men left. We saved them. We pulled them out of the line of fire, and the tanks, they have an escape hatch on the bottom.
Yeah.
And we got them, so they saved that whole platoon. Now,
Right.
the only thing I remember is this fellow yelling, I don't know if he was yelling it particularly to me, he said, "Gagnon's dead." Well, he had to be in K Company, otherwise he wouldn't know who Gagnon is. Gagnon was one of our men.
Right.
And we saved that whole platoon. The thing is, it was March the 7th, 1945. Now, Gagnon's brother's still alive. He was way much younger. And he heard about me being at the site where his brother got killed in World War II. So he contacted me maybe 25, 30 years ago. And he started coming to our reunions. So I said to him, one day I said to him, when your folks got the notice that your brother got killed, what day was it that he got killed? I wanted to confirm the date that was in my head. He said, March the 7th. I said, that's exactly the date, because I remember this fellow yelling, "Gagnon's dead." Now, I always wondered if this guy, this other fellow, did he survive the battle? Did he survive later on? Whatever. Did he know I was the one there? I didn't know who he was. If we were able to document that there, we probably would have got a very high medal.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. It's like yesterday. I remember. Now the tanks running over us. Normally you would be scared to death. Well, I wasn't too happy with it anyway. But we had
Not the
trained
most
that
pleasurable
way in
moment.
Camp Pendleton. We had actually trained with the tanks going over us. They straddled you, see. But of course, when we trained, we were in a hole. But that doesn't matter if they a little bit. You're dead anyway.
Yeah.
But we're on flat ground there on Iwo Jima, when that happened.
Right.
And I only wish we could have documented that. Of course, this one fellow, Lou Trezza, alludes to the fact that I should have got the Congressional Medal of Honor. I don't know about that. But because I saved so many men. See, he was aware of that situation, but he wasn't an eyewitness to it. Now, some of my things, I have eyewitnesses too. I didn't bring that. I don't know, Jim, you brought that last time maybe. But I have eyewitnesses to it. There's still, what happened is when we got back to Maui, I started saying that. There was a fellow, and I won't name him, he didn't even go to Iwo Jima. He must have done something wacky or something, and they left him back on Maui. Okay. And that always bothered me, when a fellow would screw up and they'd take him out of harm's way. They're taking him out of harm's way, right? We go into combat in the worst battle of the war, he's back on Maui. So all the way back from Iwo Jima, our company commander, I could say that, Captain Wagner kept saying, I'm going to get him. Well, he did. He was in the Marine Corps way before me, this fellow. And he finally did get him. He busted him down to corporal. I won't say his name. But anyway, so I was a corporal at that point. I was leading a platoon on Iwo Jima. That's a lieutenant's job. But I don't even like to use the word, the guts, the fortitude to take over. It doesn't always go by rank. It's the guy that has the chops to go out there and take over. Yeah. And the men are willing to follow him. You know, that kind of stuff. So now, it's not always the man that has the rank that takes over.
It's
anyway,
if you have
anything else?
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that, you served for multiple years. Through the years, were you ever able to see the difference between like the time spent in war? Like, what did you ever see like this a new guy, a recruit, and like compare him? Like Did you ever see the difference between someone who's been in combat and someone who hasn't, like an unexperienced soldier?
The change between
comparing it with today's? Yes.
A little bit, but like kind of like.
Well, I could say this. I think the kid of today, I shouldn't use the word kid, the youngster of today is bigger, stronger, faster than we were. I won't admit that, though. I would take anybody on. The only man I would back off was from my own father. But anyway, I think there's two things missing from you people. And that's not your fault. It's the way you grew up.
Right, yeah.
There's a difference in pride and heart. We had that. Men went forward on Iwo Jima almost positive they're going to get killed or get legs blown off or whatever, that kind of stuff. Now they got what they call post-traumatic stress. You've heard of that.
Yes.
We called it combat fatigue,
Yeah.
I mean, now they're giving people post-traumatic stress. Some of them never had a bullet fired at them. I mean, what do they think about men like me? Not only me, guys like my age that went through all this stuff and is still living or died along the way. But that's post-traumatic stress. Of course, they didn't call it that. They called it combat fatigue. When a guy cracked up, we had some that cracked up. They just couldn't take combat. And like I said to you before, you cannot predict how a man would react in combat. Another thing, you can't predict from 1 minute to the next. A guy can be a hero 1 minute and a coward the next minute, or whatever you want to call him, or a coward 1 minute and a hero the next minute. Right. It doesn't even have to be from one battle to the next. It can be your mind plays crazy tricks on you when you're in combat. You do a lot of things you do spontaneously, like those life-saving things. I didn't think I was going to get killed or wounded, and how I
Did you?
How I didn't.
Did you ever get wounded? Like how many
Well,
times?
I got two little marks, one here and one there. I can't. You wouldn't even see anything.
Yeah, no,
two little blue marks. But that happened when I got blown up in the air 3 times on Iwo Jima and didn't lose 1 second. Luckily, they were not shrapnel. If they were shrapnel mortars or artillery, I probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
What they used, the Japanese, maybe it was because of their frugality or maybe they were running out of ammo, they shot a lot of what they called pitric acid at us.
Okay.
It was a green thing. You ever hear of pitric acid?
I've heard of it.
And it had a funny smell to it. But the time when I got hit, luckily it was pitric acid. It blew myself and this fellow up in the air. And he cracked up. Again, I won't give you his name. He just died about a year ago.
Okay.
He went completely blind in later years, they told me. But he was about a year and a half younger than me. But when when the shell landed, blew him and me up in the air, is then he cracked, and I had to get him out of there too. I don't even count that as life-saving, but so anyway, 3 different times I got blown up in the air. But luckily, they weren't shrapnel things. I got 2 little more. I didn't even know that I got hit for 3 or 4 days. Iwo Jima was such a brutal battle that if you didn't have an arm or a leg blown off, you just kept going. And one day, about 4 days later, I guess it was, I looked down on my dungarees and I said, I see blood down there. I said, what the heck, I got hit and I didn't know it, but I said, I know when I got it. It was when that shell landed between us. And it's a talking point. I've had that for, now you can hardly see it. It's 2 little blue marks, one here and one there, that the shell landed there, you know.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Okay. So when you got hit, did you ever feel like, oh, okay, this is it, or okay, wow, this is going to be a hard, going to be a painful wound or something, or was it always like kind of like the green acid, the acid pill, like you said, like
you know what
didn't really
happened? I took in my mind, I decided when we hit Iwo Jima, at that time I was a veteran. Remember that. I had been through 3 battles before that.
Right.
I had a bunch of replacements that joined me. My machine gun squad, I had a bunch of replacements. They were little babies. They were your ages, 17 years old. They didn't even know how to take care of themselves, let alone in combat. I had to show them everything, but I tell you, they were loyal. They would follow me to anywhere. One of them named his son after me, and
wow.
he named his son after him too. And they live in Oklahoma. The father died. He was 4 years younger than me from smoking. Don't ever smoke. But
Never
anyway, I said, well, what did you name your son? He's from Oklahoma.
Right.
He says, Gary. I said, stupid, my name is Charlie. He says, no one ever called you Charlie. They hung a nickname on most everybody, and I was Gary.
You were Gary.
Instead of Garabedian, Gary, see? So anyway, I called them about once a year, and the last time I called him, I said, is Gary there? He said, I'm Gary. I said, no, you're too young. He said, oh, you want my father? I said, you named Gary too? He said, yeah. So I said, then I told him who I was. I said, did your grandfather ever, and then when I spoke to the father, I said, did your father and grandfather ever talk about the war? The only thing he said, he told them that if it wasn't for me, he wouldn't be alive. They were young kids.
Yeah.
I had to show them everything, you know.
Yeah.
And luckily, I didn't lose any one of them. That's unheard of. Because of my original machine gun squad, out of 10, 6 got killed. 6 got killed in combat. And I could name them. There's been no problem with that. Turner, Montgomery, Stapleton, Gennari, Tripota, and Blackman. I mean, that's public knowledge, so I can say that. 2 others got wounded. One, they took his arm off, and one got post-traumatic stress, if you want to call it that. So out of the 10, 6 got killed. I'm the only one that went through it all. And so I saw more combat than all of them. I was lucky I went through it. A lot of combat is luck. A lot of it is your skill or whatever you want to call it. One thing I will say about myself, I did everything that I was taught to do in training. Some guys don't do that. On Iwo Jima, I saw men just go like this here, just because they figure they're going to get killed or wounded anyway. I never allowed myself to get physically or mentally that distorted that, I never allowed that to happen.
No, yeah.
And so that probably helped too. But of course, if a bullet or shell's going to hit you, you're going to get hit anyway.
Right.
But you can help yourself by doing the things you were trained to do. And I never got to the point where I was completely exhausted,
Yeah.
mentally or physically. I don't know whether that was a mind thing Well, I had a strong body too, so I don't know. Maybe both things helped.
Combination of the two.
I had a tremendous strong body. I got that gifted from my father. But anyway, anything else? Tell me, ask me anything.
Do you have any specific memories with the replacements, the younger kids that joined you?
See, I can't hear it.
He says he wants to know, do you have any specific moments that you can recall, like maybe like a certain moment that really stuck with you with some of the replacements in your division?
When they got killed, you mean?
Not necessarily when they got killed, but do you like what was your favorite memory of your replacement with your replacement squad?
Good and bad?
Yeah. Anything, whatever sticks out to you.
Well, I tell you, I never seen morale like we had.
Morale.
The men that you get,
Right.
like in my outfit, I can't speak for everyone's outfit. That's probably basically the same. Don't forget, I was infantry.
Mm-hmm.
My outfit, by the way, K Company, when I said that is a rifle company. The most forward element of any fighting unit is the rifle company.
Right.
I was a machine gunner in a rifle company. So you have, I can show you basically how a division is formed.
Right.
All the way down. You have 3 squads in a platoon, 3 platoons in a company, 3 companies in a battalion, 3 battalions in a regiment, and 3 regiments in a division. Everything in the United States, I think it's basically the same now. Although they don't fight as a whole division now. They fight with a squad or something like that. But it's not the same type of fighting, you know.
Of course.
So, but everything, and another thing that the United States does, and I think they still do that, the Russians, for one thing, don't do that. Everything is 2 forward and 1 back. In other words, you got the backup guy here, or the backup platoon, or company, whatever. So there's always 2 forward and 1 back. The Russians do it just the opposite. They have 1 there and 2 back here. I think our way is better, but I don't know. I guess it's still the same.
Yeah.
I guess basically the same way of if a division went in to fight, that would be basically the same way. I think it's still the same even now, but they don't have a division fighting as a division or even a regiment. If you notice, you read the papers, I guess, where you see a squad goes into a house and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, all right, as a comparison, in Afghanistan, we've been there, I think, 14 years, and in Iraq, I think 13 years, or one more year after that, since then, whatever. They just now hit 6,500 killed. 6,500 killed in both wars all those years. On Iwo Jima, in 1 month, we had 6,800 killed.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had, like I said, we had the most casualties in the Pacific War only because, I said that before, in a 12-and-a-half-month period, no outfit in U.S. history, even now, has hit 4 major battles, only mine. We hit the Marshall Islands, February 1st, 1944. We hit Saipan, June the 15th, 1944. We hit Tinian, July the 24th, 1944, and we hit Iwo Jima, February 19th, 1945. So it's 12-and-a-half months. And anyway, what else?
I think we're actually good for now. Thank you very much, Mr. Garabedian, for coming in
thanks.
today.
It was
Thanks
very
for
interesting.
having me.
Great.
Of course. It was
And
a
again,
great honor.
remember to go to college.
College
All
is
of you.
important.
Thank you very much. I
is
will
important.
tell my mother that. Thank you
No
for joining us.
smoking.
Of course.
No smoking.
ver-
That's a big
never.
one.
That's a bad
Of
one.
course, no drugs that goes along with it, but
Once again, would like to thank Mr. Garabedian.
another thing I don't like, but I'm off it now, right?
Yeah.
Another thing
we're-
I
Oh, wait.
hate,
Let's
I
just
hope
do
none of you have tattoos. I hate to see these men with all those tattoos.
They always stay on you forever.
I can't stand it.
Yeah, I get you.
I can't stand it. I
Yeah.
go nuts when I see that.
Yeah.
Those basketball players on their legs, on their arms. You know, God never made a perfect body, so to speak. Even these beautiful girls and all. Nobody's body is perfect. But why make it more imperfect by adding garbage to it? That's my, I don't know. I hope none of you have tattoos.
That'd be bad.
Neither one of my grandchildren have. Although my grandson's wife has, down here and see it way before she met him. I happen to know it because one day her dress went up a little bit and I saw it.
All right. Thank you so much.
You don't have it where you can see it.
Yeah, no, that's important.
But nobody else in my family's ever had a tattoo.
No, sir.
In World War II, not most, but about 50% of the Marines especially got a tattoo, but they got a small one. They got the Marine Corps emblem, something like that. Or they'd put their wife's or girlfriend's name, but that isn't always great. You have a girlfriend or a wife and you go home and you marry somebody else.
Man.
And then you got to live with that the rest of your life.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Garabedian, for coming
Thanks
in
a
today.
lot for having me.
That just about wraps it up.
I hope you got
Prerit.
something out of it.
I'm Georgio. This is Mr. Garabedian.
Mr. Garabedian, thank you once again.
Hello, welcome back to day 2 of the Lions Club Oral History Project. Again, my name is Christopher Chow. I'm a grade 12 senior here at Rutherford High School. And today we will have Mr. David Chadwick, who served on the Navy for 3 years and is also a graduate of Rutherford High School. And alongside me is Emma Savitsky, who is a junior student at Rutherford High School. So you can start.
What was your specialization in the Army?
I was in the Navy, and I was a deck officer. I served on a sub-chaser. I was the executive officer, and I was on board her for about 14 months in the South Pacific.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
What made you want to enlist?
I enlisted on January the 12th, 1942. And in those days, the Navy had a program called the V-12 program, where people who were in college were sent back to college. So I was sent back to college for a year. Then they sent me to Brown University for midshipman school. And I was there about 7 months. And then they sent me to Miami to sub-chaser school. I was there for about 6 months. And incidentally, I just had been married, so it was a honeymoon, more or less, on Miami Beach. And then from Miami, they sent me to the 12th Naval District, which is California. And I spent a month sitting around there. And then they sent me to the 14th Naval District, which was Hawaii. And one morning they woke me up and told me we were going to fly to Noumea, New Caledonia, where my sub-chaser was. So we took a 3-day flight to Noumea, New Caledonia, during which time one of the engines on our PBM went out, and we had to fly back to Johnston Island, and we sat there for a week waiting for them to fly a new engine out. Eventually we got the engine and then flew on to Noumea, where I picked up the ship. And that started my heroic career.
Do you remember the day that your service ended?
Do I remember the date of service? I don't remember, but I just happen to have it here in writing, because I thought somebody might ask me a question about a date. Let's see. And it isn't on the sheet of paper, so I don't remember, but it was 1945 sometime. And incidentally, one of our alumni here, a fellow named Eddie Phillips, was the lieutenant who discharged me in New York and paid me off. So I started in Rutherford and ended with a Rutherfordian in New York.
What were the conditions of the places you stayed at while serving?
The places I stayed at?
Yeah.
Well, they were not bad. I was in Hawaii in the officers' quarters, stayed there. On the islands that we flew to, they all had nice quarters because we were generally overnight stay. So there are no problems with the quarters that I had. Being in the Navy, you know, as long as you're afloat, you're doing pretty well. The Army's not so good. You know. I was happy to be in the Navy.
Do you remember what your fellow soldiers, how they felt about serving in the Army? Like, how they
Say
felt
that-
about the cause they were fighting for?
Say it one more
Your
time.
fellow soldiers, how did they feel about the cause of the war?
How they, at the college I was at?
No, your fellow soldiers.
Oh,
or
the fellow- fellow-
from the Navy men. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have soldiers, I had sailors.
Okay, sailors.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had a good ship. We only had 25 men, 3 officers, so we were a very close group. We all worked together and we never had a problem.
Were you able to keep in touch with your family while you were serving?
You gotta say it just a hair louder.
I'm sorry. Were you able to keep in touch with your family while you were serving?
Well, by mail, which was few and far between, but we did correspond.
What was your most vivid memory of of an event that happened while you were serving?
The most, well, I'll tell you an interesting story. I was at Guadalcanal most of the time patrolling, and one night we had the night off, and we went ashore to see a movie. And we were sitting on a big log along with about 500 other men. And the movie we were looking at was The Black Swan with Tyrone Power. And we got a call over the PA system, report to your ship. They had had a sighting, a contact out in the bay, so we had to go back. And the interesting part of that story is about 3 years ago, I saw the rest of the Black Swan. Never finished seeing it at Guadalcanal, so. But it was a good show.
Where did, oh, you already answered it. Did you make any friends during the war that you kept in touch with?
Yes, I did, but not too many. Our ship's complement was pretty well dispersed all through the country, so there were no members that were in the East Coast. They all seemed to be from the West, so I kept in contact with my old skipper, but other than that, we had no contact with the others.
Did you receive any medals for your service?
No, I did not. I just received the theater awards because you were in a theater where you would get a ribbon. So, but we never shot a fire in anger. Our duty was patrol. We were just a patrol ship. And so we did anti-submarine screening off Guadalcanal. And then we did a lot of escort. We had to escort PT boats because those guys were great, but they couldn't navigate. They had no reason to navigate, so we escorted them from island to island, and also other ships. You gotta remember when a ship comes and unloads, it changes the conditions so that their compasses aren't accurate anymore. So rather than take the time to swing the ship and change the compass, we would escort them to the next island. You have to remember in the South Pacific around Guadalcanal itself had 90 islands. The largest island was called Guadalcanal. It was 90 miles by 25 miles. And we used to escort or patrol in front of that, 2 submarine screens. And then across both ends of that, Savo Island on one end, Choiseul on the other, and Florida Island on the other, made a box. So we screened the 4 areas most of the time. Very dull work, but very important. So.
Has your outlook on life changed since serving?
Has my life changed?
Like your view on life, has it changed at all since you served in the Navy?
Has my life changed?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Substantially. I married a Rutherford girl and had 3 children, so that'll take care of your time. So things changed substantially. And incidentally, the Rutherford girl I married was a Rutherford High School graduate. Also the mayor of the town, Barbara Chadwick. So we were quite busy.
What were the first few days of your service like? The first few days of your service, what was that like for you?
The first days of my service?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I was in college because they sent me to Brown, so I was there as a regular student. And then when we went to, the first time I was in uniform was at the midshipman school at Columbia. And that was, they were pretty tough on you. These fellows that were one class ahead of you who had graduated normally came back to take care of the discipline. So they kept us on our toes.
Was it difficult for you to adapt to life after being in the war?
Not at all. No. I really, I was fortunate that I didn't shoot at anybody and nobody shot at me. So spent a lot of time protecting things, but fortunately we were never involved in any action. So.
Did you plan on joining the Army while you were still in high school?
You keep telling me in the Army. And
Oh,
I
I'm
keep
sorry.
telling-
I'm sorry, the
I
Navy.
want to make sure you got me in the right service. Now, what was the question?
During your high school years, did you plan on joining the Navy? Like,
Yes, I always wanted to be in the Navy. I had an uncle that was in World War I. He was on the USS Birmingham, which was a cruiser. And he used to tell me stories about that. He got shot at, so he had a little tough. But, so I always thought I wanted to be in the Navy.
how did you feel about the cause that you guys were fighting for?
The college they sent me to?
Oh no, the cause of like the war that you guys were fighting for.
What, the cause?
Yeah.
Yeah, the cause.
I thought it was an excellent cause. So, yeah, there was no question about that. I think the Japanese made a terrible mistake and we wanted to correct it. So, and we did.
Did that change like throughout? Were you still as passionate about the cause throughout your entire service as you were in the beginning?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're just trying to get the job done.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, once we started, the Japanese really didn't have much of a chance in the Navy. They had a much bigger and stronger force than we had. The only thing they couldn't do is they couldn't replace anything.
Yeah.
So if we sunk something, that was the end of that. Whereas we had all the efforts of the manufacturing capabilities of the United States, that we were building them faster than they could sink them. So they just didn't have a chance once we got started. So.
Were your fellow sailors as passionate as you were?
Mm-hmm.
Were your fellow sailors as
Oh, yeah.
passionate as you were?
Oh, sure. Everybody had the same purpose. They wanted to get in the fight and get it over.
Yeah.
So,
Can you describe the morale within your ship?
yeah,
The morale between you and your sailors, between the ship?
on our ship, the morale was excellent
Good.
because and we were very close.
Yeah.
We're only 25,
Yeah.
so there was never a problem. I don't think we had one captain's mast where we brought anybody up on charges for anything. A couple guys went on leave and came back with a few 2-shooters in them, but that was no problem. So other than that, why, it was, we never saw much in the way of activity that they could get involved in, because let me tell you, those islands, they're nothing. And the thing that amazed me is they had a couple of islands down there that are about 2 feet above sea level. And right across the middle of the island, one of these islands, was a chain link fence. And one side the English owned it, and the other side the French owned it. I wouldn't give you 5 cents for the whole island, but they raised copra. So it was an activity where they made money, so they fought over it. Guadalcanal, where I operated, was owned by Germany, and then England came and took it back, and it was an English possession when I was there. Later on, as of today, they are an independent country. So, and it's a very nice island. Where we patrolled, the island was 90 miles long, and it was a beautiful beach. I mean, really gorgeous beach. So that there was no anchorage there. So we had to anchor across the bay at Florida Island, a little island called Tulagi. And that's where the PT boats operated out of. So they were quite active. But every now and then they'd want to go up to Slot, which is a series of islands all the way going north. And we would have to take 2 or 3 of them with us, and we only made 15 knots. They could do 40 knots. So they didn't enjoy the trip, but we had to take them because they couldn't navigate. But outside of that, it was a pretty dull routine.
So no major action or anything?
We carried 6 depth charges, 2 20-millimeter guns, 1 40-millimeter gun, and a set of hedgehogs, which are racks where you fired off the bow, and he went down. We never fired a shot in anger. We used to go on the beach for practice. Sometimes that was embarrassing because they'd have a PBM carrying a sleeve behind it, and there'd be 3 of us sub-chasers there, so we'd send a crew over for practice. And they'd tip the ammunition with the paint, different colors. We would be red, he'd be orange, we had the distinction of not having a red blot on any of the sleeves. So we got a nasty note from the CO on that, but other than that, it was pretty calm. Took a trip to New Zealand. That was very interesting. That's a great country. If you ever want to go to a country to visit, it's really very lovely. So it's a good run down there.
You brought your camera with you on the boat. Did you bring anything else with you?
Not that I can think of. Personal items?
Yeah.
No, everything the Navy owned. No, that's all I brought. Yeah. Brought jewelry. Had my own ID bracelet. But outside of that, nothing. Because there was nothing to do. It was really, I spent a year down there, and you go on watch, go take a nap, or sit in the sun. Occasionally we go on the beach, but there was nothing much on the beach, except you could get some ice cream. But other than that, it was pretty mundane. So,
Would you prefer like that kind of more subdued but important activity, or would you rather have been on like fighting physically?
oh, I'd rather been doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, when you finish midshipman school, they assign you something. You can put in a request.
Yeah.
Okay. So I put in a request for Cruise's 3rd Naval District. So New York is the 3rd Naval District. So what did I get? I got instead of a 800-foot whatever,
Yeah.
I got 110-foot in the 14th Naval District, which is out of Hawaii. So my request didn't mean much.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I made a request for cruises out of the 3rd Naval District. And what I got was a boathouse in the Solomons, Maryland, with 75 boats to look after. And these boats, their job was to go out and retrieve torpedoes that were test fired in Patuxent River, Maryland. Every torpedo that went on board a sub was test fired. And our job was to go out and get them, because sometimes they didn't float. So I had a diver and sent him down to get it. We had an interesting and a bad experience there. These were new torpedoes. These were acoustic torpedoes. They ran and they homed on sound. And so when we were going to test them, we had a raft out in the middle of the river. We put up 2 black boys and fire a cannon, and that meant everybody stopped what they were doing, because oyster fishing was a big item down there. And they'd have a little 1-horsepower motor that choke, 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 choke. That was a no-no, so they were supposed to turn that off. And one time, one of those fellows thought they were going to get one more bucket up, but he didn't get it up. And the torpedo went right up through his boat, killed him, sunk the boat, which was tragic. But that was my last assignment. And from there, I came back to New York, and a fellow Rutherfordian named Eddie Phillips was the guy that paid me off in New York. He was a paymaster, and we gave him my money, and off I went.
So if you weren't to enlist in the Navy, what do you think you would have done after graduation?
What did I do?
If you weren't to have enlisted in the Navy, what would you have pursued after graduation?
I might have gone back to college, because I didn't finish
Oh, right,
my
right.
4 years, so I probably would have gone back.
And what did you study in college?
But I had a job,
Oh, okay.
so I went right to work. And I was married at the time, so we started a family immediately upon my return.
Yeah.
So that kept me busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you left to serve, did it feel more of like did you feel that you had to sacrifice a lot, or were you enthusiastic about doing so?
Oh, I went in the active reserve.
Yeah.
That lasted about 2 years. And I went to some meetings, but other than that, I had no contact with the Navy. I enjoyed it. It was, if you can say that about being involved in the war, because I happened to catch the good end of it. And the Navy was good for me. So. Yeah.
So how was adjusting to life back into Rutherford after you came back? Like, I saw your resume that you sent, and there seemed to be a lot of things that you took active in Rutherford as a town. How did that come about?
Well, the first thing that happened when I came back, I became a scoutmaster from Troop 4 in Rutherford, which is no longer active. And while I was there, the mayor, Julian Green, he put me on the Rutherford Recreation Commission, and I became the chairman of that. And right at that same time, they just started building Memorial Field. So I got involved in that because the Rutherford Little League was just starting. We were starting to get that going, and we needed a place to play. So I came up and got the council to give us a plot of land for the field. And so I spent a lot of time with a lot of others building that field. And then, of course, I got to be the coach of the Rotary team. And an interesting point was that I had 2 boys on my team who made the big leagues.
Oh, wow.
Both Rutherfordians. Garabedian Allier and Billy Hands. Interesting thing was I was the coach, and Billy Hands was the outfielder, and Garabedian Allier was my pitcher. Of course, when they got to the big leagues, Garabedian Allier made the outfield, and Billy Hands made the pitcher. That probably exhibits how much coaching I did. It was effective. But they were good boys. But I doubt that too many little league teams had 2 people that made the big leagues. But they were good. So. And from there, it just I went on the council, and got involved. So, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And of course, my wife got on the council, and she did better than I did. She made mayor.
That's great.
I ran for mayor. I came in second. So, but I lost to a good guy, Justin Tokarski. I don't know whether you remember him, but he and I were very good friends. We were members of the Upper Montclair Country Club together, played a lot of golf together. And he beat me by 8 votes. So that's part of politics.
If there was one thing that you took away from the Navy that has affected you throughout your life in Rutherford, what do you think it would be?
That I took away from the Navy, I think discipline.
Discipline.
Yeah. I learned you got to play the game, and you got to play by the rules.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much, Mr.
Well, it's a pleasure to be
Chow.
with you.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
So that concludes day 2 of our oral history project. Thank you. Again, my name is Chris Chow, and this is
Emma Savitsky.
And this is
David Chadwick.
Thank you. Hi, welcome back to day 3 of the Lions Club Oral History Project. Again, my name is Chris Chow. I'm a senior at Rutherford High School, and today we will be interviewing Mr. Patrick Tuccillo, who has been a Rutherford resident of over 60 years and has served in the infantry for 33 months. And interviewing beside me is Hallie Schiller, a junior at Rutherford High School.
To start off the interview, how old were you when you joined the fight?
I was inducted, I believe it was May 1943.
So what age would you have been?
I beg your pardon?
What age would you have been at that time?
I'm not following that.
How old?
I was just 19.
19.
How did you feel signing up at that age?
I had no alternative. I got drafted. Everybody was getting drafted in those days, as my brothers 4 of us went in. 2 volunteered because they knew they were going to get drafted. And my brother Joe got drafted, then they drafted me.
How did you feel about going to war?
I felt it was my duty.
While you were in war, what motivation kept you going?
I guess a lot of motivation was that I had a young girlfriend back home. And of course my mother.
Yeah.
I had no father, mother.
What was the funniest moment that you remember while in service?
The funniest?
Yeah.
While I was in service. What can I think? It had to be in Camp Cabibbo, Oklahoma. My funniest moment, because once I got overseas, there were no funny moments. It had to be in Camp Cabibbo, Oklahoma.
Do you want?
Whatever it was. I don't think of anything really funny. Everything was so learning, studying, doing exercises. But I never remember anything real funny. I really don't.
What was your daily life like during that time?
My what?
Like your life day to day?
My life?
Yeah, like what routines did you go throughout your day?
I got my hearing aids and I
Yeah. How would you describe a normal day?
A normal day in the service?
Yes.
While we were in the States?
Yes.
The bugle would blow, I think it was 5:30, 5:45. You had to get up, get ready. You went to breakfast, and then you went to out training. Training either was running distances, taking your rifle apart, learning how to clean your rifle, things like that. Then they would teach you intersection and resection to learn where your enemy was. And it was all more or less Army study and everything you would go to the field to shoot, of course. You'd have your practice with your M1 rifle. It was all military all the way through. And you finished at 6 o'clock at night.
So what would you do after that?
Well, you had the time off after that. You would go to the PX. They had PXs, whatever they were called. They had a different name. If you want to go have a beer or some sandwich or something other than what you ate in the kitchen, you go there. But I never bothered that because being a sergeant at the time, I had to study. I mean, I wasn't a college graduate. I had to study because they would give me the company to teach them resection and intersection, to locate your enemy, cone pleasure of a rifle, how to take it apart. And no one was instructed on how to take the bolt apart. The rest of the rifle, yeah. But when you took the extractor and the ejector, only the main people knew how to do that. And we were taught to do that.
Do you remember how you felt your first few days in service?
Yeah, I was in Camp Tuccillo, New Jersey, and hold to behold. That might have been a funny thing about it. I had trained racing birds. And when they had that in the thing, they were holding me to send me to somewhere with sending out messages. But then the thing broke loose badly in Germany. They shipped me right out. I was there about 2-3 weeks in Fort Dix. And I sent me to Camp Cabibbo, which was an infantry division, the Rainbow Division. And that's a rifle company. I mean, you have rifle, you have artillery, you have mortars, heavy duty. The rifleman is the worst thing you could get because you are the front man between the enemy and yourself. No one is there.
Was there any particularly stressful moment that you recall?
Stressful?
Yes.
The most stressful moment I'm going to tell you. It was when they took us. My lieutenant was Lieutenant Rath. I don't know if you people understand what a MLR is, the main line of resistance. That stretches right across all of Europe with different countries. They took us back, they fed us a little bit, and then they took us out, and we took the town of Rajwood, I think it was called, a little farm town with one street in it. And Rath says, I says, what are we doing here? He says, we're the only platoon out here. Everybody's back at the MLR. We are to stay here, and we are to determine what the enemy have up ahead of us. I says, then that seems bad. I says, Lieutenant, they're going to surround us. So we say the MLR was here, the main line of resistance, and this street ran this way. This was the closest line to the MLR. Lieutenant Copenrath was here with the first squad. I was the second squad up the street here. The third squad was up at the end, the furthest from the MLR. And it was a town called Fort something. You could hear, we pulled guard duty every night. Every night, even myself, we pulled guard duty. You could hear shuttling up at Fort Lewis was the name, I think, of the place that the Germans were in. But you could hear trucks coming up, stopping. After 15, 20 minutes, half hour, they would go away. I said to my assistant, I says, McGee, I don't like this. We're going to get hit. In the Army, they taught me supplementary route of withdrawal. Now we're on a street, one street in town, that's all. The rest is all farmland. We pull guard duty the first day, the second day, the third day. The second day or the third day, I'm pulling duty. And so help me God, I'm looking up at the North Star. I had my wrist compass on. They used to give me a wrist compass. I said, there's the North Star. The people back home are celebrating, having good times. We don't know whether they're going to live today or tomorrow. So anyhow, I said to McGee, we got to do something here. We got to get a supplementary route of withdrawal. He says, what do you want to do, Sarge? I was going through the billet, into the backyard, through the barn, into the backyard where they kept cattle and stuff, whatever it was. We're going to knock that fence down. That's our supplementary route of withdrawal. I think it was the fourth night or the fifth night, a deep, deep fog set in, unbelievable fog. In being out in the country, farmland, darkness, you couldn't see anything. But Lieutenant Copenrath calls and says, Sarge, come on down here, we're getting hit. So I said to the men, let's go. As we're going out the door, he calls back and he says, take everything, we're pulling out of here. Get everything, it's snow on the ground. Being the sergeant, I'm on the middle of the ground. My men are on the gutters. We stopped moving forward, or we waited for the third squad, who had 2 machine guns with jeeps, to come down and meet us. Now we started moving down towards where Copenrath was. I think we got maybe 100 feet, 200 feet down the street. All of a sudden, I said, McGee, get the men down. I see 3 silhouettes. I could just barely see them ahead of me. 1, 2, 3. But they're speaking German. They're talking to me in German. But we were taught, watch yourself, because free fighting Alsatians, fighting with us, speak German. So I said, damn it, what are we going to do now? I said, well, we had passwords. I guess you know that. The password that night was, Jack, you say halt. He said, Jack, you say knife. So I said, McGee, I'm going to give him the signal. I said, halt. Guy didn't reply. Boom, boom, 3 shots went off. One went through the ear, hit my head. I knew I was hit, so I said, McGee, let's get back, get back. We got back to the supplementary route of withdrawal. We went through it. It was a long night. From 11, we didn't get back to the MLR until 3 in the morning. We met all kinds of obstacles. The biggest obstacle we met is snow on the ground. And O'Connor says to me, Sarge, which way you want us to move? I says, move that way. The compass says that. We move out. He brings me up. And he says, Sarge, look at this. And I'm not giving you no lies now, I'm telling you this. It's a long story. He says, look at this. Just above the snow, you could see it, round circles. I said, McGee, that's a tank mine. And that's ours. When we planted tank bombs, we also planted anti-personnel. That if the tank required hundreds of pounds. If they wanted to go out and deactivate, they might step on the anti-personnel. Comes up 2 feet or a foot in the air, explodes, knocks your feet out. I said, Jesus, what are we going to do now? I said, pass the word back. I'm the sergeant. I got to take the lead. I'm going to put my feet and a foot in the snow. I want everybody to follow that footstep. If something happens to me, that's it. I was said already, if they capture me, I think they're going to kill me. Because I know I took 2 men out that night. Because when I went down, the first fire hit me, I popped 3 or 4 bullets into the first guy, just over the side of my barrel. He didn't moan, he come down. I turned it to the other fella, and I pumped the rest of the clip. But they bolt operated. I know it's Germans. We don't have a bolt operated. Ours is semi-automatic. So then we started that trip back. I go, and then finally we hit a concertina wire, which is the right thing. They put a concertina wire, tank mines in front of that, so they can't go over the concertina wire, and then had personnel line. But we got through safely. And we turned to the left. We finally came to a road where those 2 Jeeps used to ride up to bring us ammunition and food. One guy was a big guy, another guy was a small driver. And he says, which way we going now, Sarge? I says, my compass says right. The big guy said, no, the little guy says, no, you're going to go right back to Fort Lewis. I says, wait a minute. Look, you guys are attached to us. They were attached to us. I'll tell you what we do. I'm going right. You guys want to go left? That's your prerogative. The big guy said, I'm going with the little sergeant. I'm going with him. We turned right, and we're going. In the fog and all now. And O'Connor took the lead as a guard, the first scout. Quite a ways up the road, he stops me again. He says, hey, Sarge, the roads are elevated, and we're in the gutters. He says, look at that. 2 pillboxes, one on each side of the road. That's machine guns in there. Jesus Christ, this is... I'll tell you what we do. The guy said, let's sneak up and throw grenades in there. I said, no, that'll flash, they'll know where we are. They'll start dropping artillery on us. Leave it alone. Let's get by them in the gutter. We got by them. Kept going. Finally, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, he calls me forward again. He says, look at the guy. There's a guy up there. See it in the shadow? I says, yeah. This guy was... I says, well, now we'll know if we made the mistake. I says, halt. He says, Jack. I answered, knife. We ran into the line. When we got in there, it wasn't our company. It was a different company, of course. And the lieutenant there says, I'm putting your men back on his line. We're going to get counterattack. I said, they got beat up. Leave them alone. They got to come back. And my head is bleeding. It's stuck. The hat is frozen to the hole. So he put us back on the line. And then the story went on when we got back to our line. The trouble I had with my captain. That didn't even, just because it was a bad with him. I cursed him out and everything else. Because when I got in there, he's laughed. I hear you got hit bad last night. He's laying on a mattress on the concrete, dirty dishes. I said, what the hell's so funny about that? And I asked him for a Jeep to go up to the front lines and make some supply to my men that would beat up and then lost stuff. He wouldn't give me a Jeep. I can't jeopardize a Jeep. I cursed him. And the big sergeant. I was a tech sergeant. No, I was staff, then I became a tech. His name was Montana. He said, Sarge, keep quiet. You're going to get court-martialed. I don't care what I'm going to get. Take me off the lines, then court-martial me. I finally got a guy across the street, the supply sergeant Miller, to give me supplies, and I hitchhiked a truck, bringing ammunition all to the front line. I got back to the front line. And then when I got there, they wanted to send me to get to see it patched up. I said, I lost my men. I'm going. They had put some at my off. They had put bandages around. You're going back. I hitchhiked with the guys. I went up to the front line like a jerk. That was one of my biggest ones. I mean, I went through other battles, but that was the biggest for me. Some of the men stayed in the barn because there was all those 2 squads there, and I found out some of them had, after the war ended, they had stayed up in the barn and got captured. But I don't know. That was the end of that. But that was, I mean, I went through battles. I saw my lieutenant finally going into Schweinfurt, Germany, get machine gunned, cut him right in half. By the time I got to him, he was dead. Cobra Rats. 6'3" man, beautiful man. Had a wife back home, having a baby in Boston. Damn, war's no good. And he was a good lieutenant, excellent lieutenant. But that's my story, my main story. I mean, I went from France. I started in Marseille, France. I went across Germany, all the way across Germany to Austria when the war ended. And then we were getting prepared to go to Japan. We were going to ship. Lucky, Truman dropped the bomb and we didn't have to go. And yet I was only 22 when I come home. January 5th, 1946, I come home up the Hudson River. That's the story. You want any other questions? Go ahead and ask. If I can answer them, I'll answer them. But you asked me my horse. Then that was the worst for me.
Well, you mentioned a few people that you worked with. Did you build any lasting relationships while you were there?
Relationships with the men I used to have? No, because they were replacements. I think the only men I had in my platoon at the time left was McGee, Rice, what was the other guy's name? McGee, Rice, another fellow's name I remember. There was only about 3, 4 guys left of the whole platoon left. There's no more. The kitchen was there, of course, the kitchen. They stayed in the back line. But I can only remember in my squad, I say, McGee, Rice, and Freitas. That's about the only guys I can remember. I think there was a fellow by the name of Hare, too, a hillbilly boy. That's it.
After returning home from the war, what was the first thing you did?
Kissed my girlfriend. No, the first thing I did, my mother, may she rest in peace, had heart trouble, sugar diabetes, no husband. He had died in 1937. She had 4 boys in the service. One disappeared completely. The ship never came back. And they assumed he was gone, so he was Vincent, he was gone. And when I got hit, I had told him, don't send no message home to my mother because she'll worry. God and behold, they sent her a message. The first thing happened as I walked in the door, I'll never forget, she's sitting in the chair. I say, Ma, in Italian, I had to speak Italian. I said, Ma, come stai? How are you? She grabbed my head. The first thing she did, she turned my head and looked. And she said in Italian, oh, non è male. It's not bad. I said, I tried to tell you that, Ma. It wasn't bad. That was it. And then, of course, I went to see my girlfriend, which is, she was 16 when I left. No, 15 when I left. And when I come back in 46, she was 18, going to be 19, the end of December the 25th, 27th. Then I married her. We married 66 years.
I see you have some awards next to you. What did you get those for?
Medal?
Yes.
All these medals are all, this I told you, second award of the Bronze Star, they don't give you a new medal. It's the script from the presidential script, which tells you that's the second award of the Bronze Star for all duty in the service. And they give you what they call the thing to go on the medal. You'll see it here. The V and the cluster, showing the second award. I should have had the second award for this. I never went back for this. The only way I got that, when I got to Fort Dix in New Jersey, he's examining me, the doctor. You were naked, of course. Finally, he says to me, "What's this, a bullet wound or shrapnel?" I said to him, "Doc, how do you know it's a wound?" He says, "I know, it's a bullet wound." He must have put me in for the Purple Heart. But then when I got hit in Swineford, that's where the lieutenant got killed going into Swineford. And my platoon sergeant, I got hit in Wattsburg, Germany. So that put me at the head of the platoon, tech sergeant, 3 up and 2 down. And when we're leaving Swineford for the attack, we get up on slope, and they just gave me a new lieutenant in Swineford, brand new rookie. He was a wonderful man. He proved to be a beautiful lieutenant. When we went into the attack, before we went the day in, he says to me, "Sarge, do me a favor." I says, "What?" He says, "You've been leading this platoon for quite a while. I know nothing about combat. Could you do me a favor?" I said, "What is it?" "Could you lead the platoon so I could get ideas?" I said, "Lieutenant, I'll tell you what. I'll lead the platoon. You better be alongside of me. Because if I stop, they're going to stop." Hold and behold, we get up on that plateau, machine gun opens, you could see the bullets skipping along. One hits me in the arm. The rifle went flying, I went down. I said to Lieutenant, "Get him in." He got him into the town. They took that town, but I was on the floor. And they just came to cut my 2 jackets. I said, "Young medic, don't cut the jackets." He cut the 3 jackets. And that was worse than getting hit here. The ricochet. You know, ricochet is hits the ground and it comes at you flat. Whew. That black and blue my arm from here to here. I had to pick up a rifle when somebody went down. I picked up a rifle. I didn't know where mine went. But that's the second time I got hit.
How do you feel that your memories of war have affected your life?
It didn't. I hear these people coming back, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that." It didn't affect my life at all. I come back, I start going with my wife, and then I can't say it honestly reflected on me, because the only thing is from the bullet wound that went through the ear and hit the head, escaped the head, I was getting headaches, steady, I couldn't stand them. The Army said, "Take a doctor, go to him, we'll pay for it." And the doctor was Satani. And they had come up with a new insulin that when you stepped on this thing, when he hit you with the insulin, it felt like you were on fire. It would move from your legs on up. I think after about 3, 4 treatments, never, knock wood, never had headaches no more. Never.
How would you compare today's military to the one that you experienced?
Way different. They got everything. They got they got this, they got this, they got that. I don't know how they operate. I mean, they carry so much material with them. We didn't carry that much. We used to have a gas mask. and maybe I shouldn't say it. We got rid of the gas mask we threw away, and it had a strap around it that you used to put around your belt. We took the belt. We took our K rations. I don't know if you know what a K ration is. It's a box about that wide, about that long, and about that high. They gave you 3, brown, green, and red. One was breakfast, lunch, and supper. I used to take that, wrap that around, and it had the clip, and I used to clip it on the back to eat. We threw our gas masks away.
You have more questions?
No, I'm thinking.
What kind of food? Actually, that's all the time we have today for day 3 of the oral history. Thank you so much for your time,
You're
Mr.
very,
Tuccillo,
very
and thank you so much for your service.
Hi, I'm Christy. I'm a junior and I go to Rutherford High School. Today we will be interviewing Mr. Theodore or Ted Van Winkle, and he served in World War II. And this is Marcus.
Okay, so the first question we have for you, sir, is before the war and before everything started, how was Rutherford and Rutherford High School, since you're one of Rutherford's oldest residents?
Yes. Well, my family came here in 1687. And so they were the first ones in what is now Rutherford. And so I was born here, and I've been here, lived here all my life. I went to Rutherford High School, graduated from Rutherford High School, and went on to college. It was very interesting in that I graduated from Rutherford High School on June 21st, 1944, and the next day I started college at Lehigh. Because in those days, it was during the war, and they had 3 semesters a year in college. And so I started in June, and I went 1 year, which ended in January, and then I enlisted in the United States Coast Guard.
Okay.
And I went to, it was then boot camp, which was Manhattan Beach, which is, it was right beyond Coney Island, between Coney Island at the bottom of Brooklyn, between Coney Island and the marine, well, I can't remember. Anyway, when I got out of boot camp, I was sent to California, to San Diego, to radar school. At that time, radar was just coming into being there. And I went to radar school on Point Loma, just outside San Diego. And of course, like everything else in the service, I graduated first in my class. And of course, from then on, I never saw a radar room in all the ships I was on, which was very, very typical. When I got out of radar school, I was assigned to a PF. Now, PF is a patrol frigate. It looks like a Coast Guard cutter, except that past the main part of it, it goes down to ground, and there's a big fantail that's only about 3 feet above the water. And so that if you looked at it from a distance, it looked like half a ship, because you wouldn't see the rear end of it. So I was on this PF, and the war ended. I did not see any action at our war. And when the war ended, our ship was in port, and I went to Union Square in San Diego, and all the Marines and the Coast Guard and were all there. There were so many of them, you could walk across the whole place on their heads, because they were this was a third fleet, and we were all getting ready for the invasion of Japan, and of course everybody was happy that we didn't have to do that. And so after the war, I was stationed on our PF was sent out on weather patrol. Absolutely the most boring thing you could possibly do. The ship that I was on had seen a lot of action in the war, and they sunk several Japanese submarines, and they'd shot down various planes, but not while I was on it. When I was on it, we were doing and we would go out for a number of days, and then we go out, I think, for 16 days, come in for 10 days, go out for another 20 days, come in for 10 days, and it was absolutely boring. We go out there maybe 800, 1,000 miles out into the ocean, and then we go at 5 knots. We would go 2 hours north, turn around, go 2 hours south, turn around, go 2 hours north. And we do this for all these days. It was very, very boring. And when I left that, I was transferred to another PF and was stationed at Treasure Island, which is up San Francisco, in San Francisco Bay. And it was while I was on that trip that they had a large earthquake under the Aleutian Islands. And this was in April of 1945. And it did an awful lot of damage in the Hawaiian Islands. They had a huge tsunami and a storm and everything else. And we were right in it. It sank a couple of destroyers, but it didn't sink us because we went over one wave and through the next wave and over one wave and through the next wave. Fortunately, we cracked a few seams, but we did not go turn over. At that time, of course, I went in as apprentice seaman, got to be second class. Then by this time, I was a first class seaman, and I'd been on it longer than the others, so that I was first seaman, which was very good because I didn't stand too many watches. Because anyway, when the storm was on, I was a quartermaster striker, which means I was striking for the post of becoming a quartermaster. And quartermaster, one of the things the quartermaster did was steer the ship. So I remember having to be very careful to steer the ship directly into the waves, otherwise we would go over it. But I can remember I'd come out on the fantail, and the fantail was very wide because this ship, the PFs were used during the war mostly to sink submarines, and of course they had all these things where they would roll the depth jump off the stern of the boat, and so we could blow up the whole ocean. It was. So anyway, I had to come up off the fantail, close the thing, then I'd run up the stairs up to the bridge. That was one thing that upset me a great deal because the officers would not let us run through the ship, even with this storm and everything. They wouldn't let us go through the ship. The officers could go through the ship, the inside route to the bridge, but we weren't able to do that. We weren't allowed to do that. So we had to go outside and run up the stairs. I'd come out, I'd run and I'd grab a pole, and then the wave would go over, and then I'd grab another. I got so I could do it in three times to get up there. But even on the bridge, we would go, you look up and you'd see the wave right up there. It was about 90 feet. And so that was pretty exciting. When I got back to Treasure Island for the last time, I was supposed to get discharged, but instead they put me on a troop ship, coming back from Japan, bringing soldiers back from Japan. Now they had room for 10,000. We didn't have quite that many. We had maybe 7 or 8,000 coming back from Japan. And this was the Admiral Mayo. It had been a United States line cruise ship. Big, big, big thing. And they had to put hammocks in the hold to take all the soldiers. So they had them six tiers high. So if they ever fell out of the top one, I don't know what would happen to them. It would be bad. And there were so many of these soldiers. Most of them were Marines. They had to go and get in line for breakfast, and after they finished breakfast, they had to get in line for lunch, and after they finished lunch, they had to get in line for dinner because there were so many of them and it took so long to go through. And of course, they were very angry at us because we just went ahead of everybody and got our meal because we were part of the crew. So we get down to we're coming through the Panama Canal, and we stop at Gatun Lake because this ship had been in the Pacific Ocean for years, several years, and it had the salt water had gotten all over it, and so the captain wanted to have the ship all washed off and cleaned and so forth. So I'm being lowered over the side of the ship, about 40 feet above the water, and there's 2 guys, one on one side and one on the other side, and one of them let go. So it went like this, it dumped me in the water from about 40 feet up. All the time I was going down, I tried to straighten myself out so I'd go in feet first, because I knew if I didn't go in feet first, it would be over for me. But fortunately, I did go right in feet first, and I was all right. When we came up, got through the canal, and then we came up through the Caribbean up to New York. And we had to remove the morphine, the kit from the life rafts before we could turn it over to the Merchant Marine. And by the way, that was, we had to turn over. So we get out there and they had 4 life rafts and they were each other and they were maybe 4 inches between each one, and you had to get on the side of the ship and reach in underneath and you take them out. So that's what we were doing coming up to New York. And we get to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and this is in May 1945. And we turn the boat over, we decommission the ship and turn it over to the Merchant Marine. And then what do? Well, we had 2 problems. One, where were we going? We couldn't stay on the ship anymore. What were they going to do with us? And we couldn't get discharged until after the May 30th day for Memorial Day. We couldn't get discharged until the next day. So, where did they put us up? Ellis Island. So I spent my last night in the United States Coast Guard on one of the cots that the immigrants had used on Ellis Island. And the other interesting thing is that the Coast Guard during wartime is under the Navy, and the Navy has appropriations to pay everybody. The Coast Guard in peacetime is under the Treasury Department. And the Treasury Department, after the war, the Coast Guard was put back in the Treasury Department, and they didn't have the money to pay us. So after about 6 months, they ran out of money. So when we got discharged at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, they couldn't give us any money. So they gave us bonds, a 6-month bond for our pay. Well, it was all right for me because Brooklyn Navy Yard isn't far from Rutherford, and I could get home. I had enough money to get home. Yeah. But my buddy there, who lived in Baltimore, Maryland, he didn't have any money to go home. So I brought him home with me, and he borrowed money from my father, and then got on a train. We took him to a train to go down to Baltimore, and then he paid us back. Wow. But,
Oh, I just have a quick question. While this is all occurring, how old were you?
I was 17
17.
when I went in. I was 18 when I got out.
Throughout this entire
19. I guess I was just 19 when I got
So
out.
this was after high school?
Yes.
Just like a little after? Or?
Well, as I say, I graduated from high school June 21st, June 22nd, I started college at Lehigh.
Oh, right.
And then I went the year at Lehigh, and then so in January of the following year, February, that's when I enlisted in the U.S. Coast Guard. And I have here a list of my relatives, 8 of whom served in World War II.
Wow.
And the one thing I'm most proud of is that all of us were volunteers. We never had anyone drafted in our family. We were all volunteers.
Speaking of your family, how did you contact your family during the war when you were on the ships or when you were in port?
When I was in port, I'd write a letter home and send it home. And to give them an idea, one time on one of the weather patrols, it was so boring, I wrote what happened every day. That's sort of a diary. And then I sent that home to my parents.
So, on the ships, do you remember any of your friends and your fellow guardsmen, any of whom stood out?
Well, yes. As I told you, I was a quartermaster striker, so that I knew very well the two quartermasters on the ship, and they were Mormons. And I was very friendly with them, and we used to get together, since there was not much to do on board the ship. We used to get together and we'd do each other's thing. Now, in other words, I would read the Book of Mormon, and they would read the Bible, and we had a Jewish fellow there, and I'm a Protestant, and we had a Catholic. So the four of us, and we'd all discuss our religions and read about them and so forth. And also, I was a bridge player, contract bridge, and I was very active in it in high school. Played in a lot of tournaments, played against some of the great players, and so when I got on board the ship there, I got them all together and taught a lot of them to play bridge. So we had 3 tables of bridge by the time we were done.
What's bridge? I'm not really familiar with it.
It's a game, it's a card game.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught bridge too. I taught bridge as a KIP center. I taught at various places.
So during the war, do you remember any unusual tasks that your supervisors or officials told you to do that were just odd?
Well, my great interest when I was a child was astronomy. And in fact, I built a 4-inch reflecting telescope when I was in 8th grade.
Wow.
And so that was my big interest. So when I was on board the ship, I knew all the stars in the sky and all this. And sometimes when it was dark, or it was when there was a lot of clouds and you couldn't see a lot of the stars, I would help the captain or whoever was the lieutenant by telling them which star was which, so when they would take the thing, because they knew several of the stars, but they didn't know all of them like I did. So when I was on watch, they would call down, say, Van Winkle, I'm very, and I would tell them.
Wow.
But I had very interesting in that on board the Admiral Mayo, there was a man whose name I forget from Woodridge or Hasbrook Heights, I forget. But he was on the ship the same time as I was on the ship, but he was in the engine room. And of course I was on the bridge, so we never had any contact at all, so I never knew him. And the same thing happened on one of my PF, where we had a fellow on there who came to me after the war and said, I was on the PF with you, and I never met him either, because he was in the engine room and I was up on deck.
So how did you feel once everything was over? You found out the war was over, it was time to go home. How did you feel then?
I was delighted. I wanted to go. When we turned over the ship, the Admiral Mayo, when we decommissioned it, so I was offered a job if I left, when I left the Coast Guard, when I got discharged, I was offered a job on the same ship as a third mate. And I thought about it a lot, but I decided, no, I want to go back to school. So I didn't do that. But I wanted to get back to school.
We also heard that you became an attorney after the war.
Yes.
Would you like to explain a little bit about that process?
Well, yes. That's a fairly long story. I got back. While I was in California, I went to Caltech and went up to Mount Palomar, because I still had this interest in astronomy. And so I decided when I came home that I was going to go to Caltech and study astronomy. So I went back to Lehigh, and halfway through my sophomore year, my father died. So I had to go to work. That was the end of that idea. So I had to go to work. So I went down to my father's company, A.W. Van Winkle and Company here in Rutherford, and I went down and I worked there for a period of time. But I wanted to finish school, so I went to Rutgers Night School in Newark. But real estate takes a lot of your time. So instead of going 4 nights a week, I could only go 2 nights a week. So it took me 10 years instead of 5 to finish my college. So when I finished at Rutgers and graduated, then I went to law school. And of course, everybody in law school called me Grandpa, because I was in my 30s when I was in law school. So when I got out of law school, then I started practice here in Rutherford, and eventually I became the judge here in Rutherford, and I was a judge for about 8 or 9 years. And I was I was assistant borough attorney. And then I was a judge, and then of course I practiced law, and I retired a number of years ago.
So looking back on your life, do you think that your time in the service as a guardsman, how do you think it impacted your life and the way you lived from then on out?
That's hard to say. I will say one thing, I think it made me a man. I grew up because when I was in high school, I was now I can get up, I can talk in front of 1,000 people, it doesn't bother me at all. But when I was in high school, I was very shy, very shy. All through school, I was very shy. I was so shy that when I found out halfway through my senior year that I was going to be second in my class and that I would have to give the salutatorian speech, I purposely let my grades fall so that I finished third in my class.
Oh my God.
I did that on purpose. And that's why I was so shy that I didn't want. And then, so when I went to Lehigh, I said to myself, I have to get over this. I have to get over this. So the first thing I did when I went to Lehigh, I joined the debating team. And that straightened me out. And, and then of course, I was very athletic when I was young. So, I was Lehigh. I played football. I was a freshman, but I started on the football team. I was on the basketball team for a while, but there I didn't. I made the varsity. It would have been better if I didn't make the varsity, because the junior varsity I would have played. Being on the varsity, I was the 13th man on a 14-man team, so I never got to play at all. So I quit the basketball and I went out for wrestling, because Lehigh at that time was the wrestling team. So I went out for the wrestling team, and I got that, and that became my best sport by far. In fact, I won the heavyweight championship in the boot camp in the Coast Guard.
Previously, you mentioned a few friends from Baltimore and some even in Hasbro Heights. Have you kept in contact with any of your old friends?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay.
Not any.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of the sports and how you were very involved in them in college, did you do any in high school?
No. All my friends in school were 3 to 10 years older than I.
Oh, really?
And where I lived, it happened to be that way. And so I was on other teams, like YMCA teams and so forth and so on, but I never went out for any of the Rutherford High School teams. Although we did have a memorable match once, basketball game. We won the Y championship, and I had the point guard on our team. I was the center on the team, and our point guard, he couldn't shoot at all. He'd throw up balls and they'd miss, and I would grab the rebound and put it in. So that's where the Y team. Now he challenged, he was also the running back on the high school football team. So he challenged Eddie Tryon, the coach, who was then the coach of the basketball team as well as the football team. He was the coach of the basketball team for a couple of years. And he challenged him to a game. So Rutherford High School, right in here in the gym, we played against the Rutherford High team, and the center on the high school team was much better than I was, and he caught all the rebounds, and I didn't. I only scored 2 points the whole game. I did nothing. But the point guard, he couldn't miss. When he was playing, he couldn't miss. Everything he threw up went in the ball. So lo and behold, we beat the high school team. I'll never forget that.
So you said the gym was over here, so is the school...
Where it is now.
Oh, really?
Where
It's
it is
still...
now.
Oh, wow.
Where they vote.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
right.
That was the gym where we...
Okay.
Eddie Tryon, by the way, was one who could stand behind the goal post, behind the post, and he could throw the basketball up in the air. It would go over the thing and come through the net. I never saw anybody who was able to do that.
So maybe during the war, you have all these memories. Is there one that stands out as the moment that you're most proud of, that shaped you the most? That put you in like a leadership position and made you the man you are today?
No, I think probably during that bad storm that we went through when I was steering the ship and so forth, I think that was the moment.
Well, we've gone through all of our questions, but we just want to say thank you so much for
you're
being
welcome.
here. We learned a
Welcome.
lot, and
Great
it was
to be
really
here.
great experience.